You've got crabgrass creeping across your lawn like it owns the place, and clover crowding into every thin spot, and no matter how much you spray, it all marches right back by August. I found something that stopped both of them cold, and it cost me under $2. I found it the year I quit trusting the label on the bag and started testing on my own grass instead. It's sitting somewhere in your house or your garage right now, and one land-grant university actually proved it works with hard numbers. And this isn't for some brand new lawn rolled out last week. This is for the tired, beat-up, patchy lawn you're standing on today. Let me take you back to last spring, because that's where this whole thing started for me. I had this strip of lawn right out by my mailbox, maybe 10 feet wide, that faces the street. It's the first thing anybody sees when they drive by. And by the middle of June, that strip was more crabgrass than grass. Ugly, coarse, light green clumps splayed out flat like somebody dropped a mop on my yard. Right beside it, in the shade of the maple, clover had taken over so thick the actual grass had basically given up. I stood there one evening with a cold drink in my hand, looking at that mess, and I thought to myself, I have spent real money on this problem 3 years running, so why am I still looking at it? That question is what turned me from a guy who mows his lawn into a guy who investigates it. And I want to walk you through exactly what I dug up, one clue at a time, because the answer surprised me so much I almost didn't believe it. Here's the first thing I got wrong, and I bet you're getting it wrong too. I thought the answer was killing the weeds. Kill the crabgrass, kill the clover, problem solved. So that first summer, I tried 3 different things, one after another, and I want to be honest with you about how badly each one failed, because those failures are the first real clue. The first thing I tried was vinegar. Everybody online swears by vinegar. So I bought the strong stuff, I loaded up a sprayer, and I hit that crabgrass on a hot afternoon. And you know what? The tops did brown out. For about 4 days, I felt like a genius. But vinegar only burns what it touches. It never reached the root. Within 2 weeks, that crabgrass came roaring back from the crown, greener than before, and worse than that, the vinegar had scorched a patch of my good grass right alongside it. So now I had dead lawn and living crabgrass. That's the opposite of what I paid for. The second thing I tried was boiling water. I read that pouring boiling water cooks the weed on the spot, and it does work on a single weed in a sidewalk crack. But have you ever tried to boil enough water to treat a 10-foot strip of lawn? I was hauling pots back and forth from my kitchen like a fool. And every place I poured, I killed a circle of my own grass right along with the crabgrass. 2 weeks later, seeds in the soil sprouted into that bare circle, and I had fresh crabgrass growing in the exact spot I'd just sterilized. The third thing was hand pulling and a bag of salt in the worst spots. Pulling crabgrass is a joke because each plant drops thousands of seeds before you ever see it, so you're always one full season behind. And the salt? The salt worked a little too well. It killed everything and then poisoned the soil so nothing would grow there for months. I'd created dead zones in my own yard. So there's your first clue, and it's a big one. 3 of the most popular tricks people pass around all failed for the same reason. They all attack the weed you can see. And by the time you can see crabgrass, the battle is already lost, because that plant has already thrown its seed into your soil for next year. Killing the grown plant does almost nothing to the crop coming behind it. That was the moment I realized I'd been fighting the wrong war the entire time. The real fight isn't in June when you see the weed. The real fight is weeks earlier, underground, before a single blade pokes through. And once I understood that, one very uncomfortable question started nagging at me. If the whole game is really about stopping the seed before it sprouts, then why does every product on the store shelf cost $20, $30, $40 a bag? Because that changes the math completely. And that's where this investigation started getting interesting. So I went and stood in the lawn aisle at the big box store, and I actually read the backs of the bags for the first time in my life. And here's what I noticed. The expensive pre-emergent products, the ones that promise to stop crabgrass before it starts, they're built around one idea. You have to buy them again every single year. Some of them twice a year. That's not an accident, that's the whole business model. A lawn that's truly fixed doesn't sell another bag next spring. A lawn that's fixed is bad for business. Now, I'm not here to tell you those products don't work. Plenty of them do. But I started asking a different question, the kind of question that makes a salesman uncomfortable. I started asking whether the thing that actually stops the seed had to be expensive at all, or whether the price tag was the product. Because when I dug into the research, when I got past the marketing and into the actual university studies, I found something that had been sitting in plain sight for over 30 years. something a real turfgrass scientist stumbled onto completely by accident. And the reason you've never heard of it isn't because it doesn't work. It's because nobody can make $40 a bag selling it to you. Let me tell you about the accident, because this is the heart of the case. Back in the 1980s, at a major agricultural university in the middle of the country, a turfgrass researcher was running an experiment that had nothing to do with weeds at all. He was studying a disease that attacks grass. And to grow that disease in his test plots, he needed a certain organic material to feed it. So he spread that material out over his grass seed trials. And something strange happened. In the plots where he'd spread this material, the grass seed wouldn't come up. It just sat there. At first, that looked like a failed experiment, a nuisance, something that ruined his data. But this fellow was a real scientist. And a good scientist doesn't throw away a weird result. He asked why. Why would this ordinary, cheap, harmless material stop seeds from sprouting? And when he chased that question down, he discovered he'd found something the lawn industry didn't have. A natural material that stops seeds from ever germinating. It doesn't burn the plant. It doesn't poison your soil. It works down at the root level on the seed itself. Right at the moment the seed tries to send out its first tiny root, the stuff dries that first root out so the seedling can't establish. No first root, no plant. And crabgrass, which lives or dies entirely by its seed coming up fresh each year, is exactly the kind of weed this stops. That university didn't bury it either. They studied it hard. They ran the trials. They measured the rates. They even patented it as a natural weed preventer. The evidence has been public and verified for decades, so the knowledge was never lost. It was just never advertised because there's no big margin in it. And that's the part that got under my skin. This wasn't a secret because it was fake. It was a secret because it was cheap. Now here's where I have to hold something back for just a minute, because I know exactly what you're thinking. You're thinking, fine, but I don't have a fresh lawn to protect. I've got an established mess that's already full of weeds. This whole seed stopping idea sounds like it only helps somebody starting over from bare dirt. And I thought the very same thing when I first read about it. So I want to stop right here and talk directly to you, the person standing on a lawn that's 10, 20, 30 years old, thin in the shade, lumpy, full of clover and crabgrass and who knows what. Because this next part is built for exactly your yard, and it's the part almost nobody explains. Here's the truth about an old, tired lawn. The reason weeds win in an established lawn isn't bad luck, it's open space. Every thin spot, every bare patch, every place where your good grass has gotten sparse is an open door. Crabgrass seed needs bare, warm soil and sunlight hitting the dirt to sprout. Clover moves into ground where the grass is weak and the soil is starved for nitrogen. So an old lawn is basically a lawn full of open doors, and the weeds just keep walking in. Which means fixing an established lawn is really two jobs at once. Job one, you have to close the doors, stop the weed seed from sprouting in those thin spots. Job two, you have to feed and thicken your existing grass, so it fills those spots itself and slams the door shut for good. And here's the beautiful part of what I found. The mystery material I'm building up to does both jobs at the same time. It stops the seed and it feeds the grass because it's loaded with the one nutrient thinning lawns are starving for. But we'll get to the full reveal in a minute. Picture yourself next spring, standing on that same tired strip of lawn, watching new crabgrass push up through the thin spots again, wondering why you're back where you started. That endless loop is exactly what the Complete Lawn Fix system was built to break. And it's the finished, permanent version of everything I'm piecing together for you here. Inside, Penny Lawn shows you the 5 levers that do most of the work for pennies and a 30-day week-by-week plan any homeowner can follow to kill weeds and fix bare spots without calling anyone. Deep Roots takes you further, diagnosing the invisible mistakes beginners never catch and handing you a 30-day advanced restoration plan with zero guesswork so you transform a struggling lawn without spending hundreds. And here's a check you can run for free tonight. Walk out with a flashlight, kneel down in your worst patch, and look at whether the soil sits bare and open between the blades. That open ground is the exact door letting your weeds in, and once you see it, the whole approach makes sense. The fastest way to get the books is to scan the QR code right there on your screen, or go to the link in the description or the pinned comment. And this one's honest year-round, because early spring is coming no matter when you watch this, and that's the only window when the seed stopping actually works. But before you plan a thing, you still need the other half of this puzzle solved, because I promised you I beat the Clover too. First, I owe you a second clue, and it's the one that solves the Clover half of the puzzle. Because crabgrass and clover are two different enemies, and I told you at the start I beat both. So let me hand you the clover fix right now, free and clear, whether you ever touch the main ingredient or not. This one traces back to that same world of university extension research, and it uses something almost everybody keeps in the laundry room. Clover has a weakness, and it's a mineral. Clover is unusually sensitive to boron. Your regular lawn grass can handle a good bit of boron in the soil, but clover can't. And there's a common household laundry booster, that white powder your grandmother used to brighten her wash, that is essentially a boron mineral. Extension horticulturists at more than one university have written up the rate for using it on clover. The documented approach is to dissolve roughly 10 ounces of that boron powder into a small amount of warm water, mix it into enough water to cover about 1,000 square feet, and spray it evenly over the clover patch. The clover takes up more boron than it can handle and gives up, while your grass shrugs it off. But, and this is a big but, I have to give you the same warning the extension experts give, because I'm not here to sell you anything, I'm here to tell you the truth. Boron does not break down or wash away quickly. Put down too much and you can build it up in your soil to the point where nothing grows well, kind of like my salt disaster. So, you use it once on a clover patch, at that rate, not the whole lawn, and you do not repeat it season after season. Used right, it clears clover for pennies. Used carelessly, it creates a dead spot. That's exactly the kind of honest detail the label on a $40 jug never bothers to tell you. So now I had the clover half solved with a laundry room mineral, and I had the crabgrass half pointing straight at that accidental discovery from the university trials. And that's when the last piece of the case clicked into place, because I realized the crabgrass material and the grass feeding problem were the same solution. Let me show you how everything connects, because this is where the whole investigation pays off. Think back to what I told you about an old lawn. Thin grass, starved soil, clover moving in because the nitrogen is gone. What does thin grass need more than anything? Nitrogen. It's the nutrient that makes grass grow thick and deep green, the one that lets your lawn crowd weeds out on its own. Now, normally you'd go buy a bag of fertilizer for that, another $20 or $30, another trip to the store. But the accidental seed stopper that university scientists discovered happens to be about 10% nitrogen by weight. 10%. That's real fertilizer strength. So the very same material that stops crabgrass seed from sprouting also feeds your existing grass a slow, steady meal of nitrogen that thickens it up and helps it close those open doors. Do you see what that means? One cheap thing does the two jobs an old lawn actually needs. It blocks the new weed seed, and it feeds the grass you already have. You are not just killing weeds anymore, you are changing which plant wins the ground. And you're doing it with something that has been proven at a university, patented as a natural weed preventer, and quietly ignored by the people who'd rather sell you two separate expensive bags. All right, I've made you wait long enough, and you've earned the answer. The mystery ingredient, the thing that stopped my crabgrass when vinegar and boiling water and salt all failed, is corn gluten meal. Corn gluten meal. It's a plain, powdery byproduct left over when corn is processed, the same corn that feeds livestock all over this country. It has been used as animal feed for 100 years. It is not a chemical, it is not a poison, it is ground up corn protein, and you can buy it at a feed store or a garden supply for a fraction of what the fancy weed preventers cost. Some folks find it sold as animal feed even cheaper by the sack. And here's the source, so you know I'm not making this up. The scientist I told you about is a real turfgrass researcher named Dr. Nick Christians at Iowa State University. In the 1980s, he was running a study on a grass disease using cornmeal materials, and he noticed the grass seed in those plots wouldn't germinate. He followed that clue exactly like a good investigator, and by 1991, his work on corn gluten meal as a natural pre-emergent weed control was patented. Iowa State has published the research. The rates are documented. This is about as real and as verified as lawn advice ever gets. And it's been sitting in the public record for over 30 years while you and I kept buying bags. Now let me tell you exactly how to use it, because a clue is worthless without instructions. The documented application rate from the Iowa State work is about 20 pounds of corn gluten meal per 1,000 square feet of lawn. You spread it dry, evenly, like you'd spread any granular product, either by hand for a small patch or with a cheap spreader for a bigger area. And the timing is everything, because this stops seeds. It does not kill grown plants. You have to put it down before the crabgrass seed sprouts. The old-timers rule that actually lines up with the science is to spread it in early spring when the soil is just starting to warm, right about when you see the forsythia bushes blooming yellow, and before the lilacs open. That's the window when crabgrass seed is getting ready to wake up. Get it down then, and water it in lightly, then let it dry out. That wet then dry cycle is what activates it against the seed roots. For that ugly strip by my mailbox, I didn't need a whole bag. For a small trouble spot, you can mix up a modest batch. And honestly, a cup or two of the meal worked into a bad patch by hand is enough to see it work with your own eyes before you commit to treating the whole yard. That's the beauty of it. You can test it on one square of lawn, the way I did, for the price of a cup of coffee, and prove it to yourself. Here's what the research also tells you, and this is the part that separates the truth from a sales pitch. Corn gluten meal is not a miracle you see overnight, and the first year, it's good, not perfect. The Iowa State trials showed something like 60% crabgrass control in the first year of use. But here's the payoff that no yearly purchase product will ever tell you. It gets better every year you use it. By the second and third year, with the nitrogen feeding your grass thicker and the meal knocking back the seed, control climbs up toward 80 and even 90%. It compounds. Your lawn gets stronger while your weed problem gets weaker, and the whole thing tips in your favor instead of resetting to zero every spring. That's the exact opposite of the buy it again forever treadmill. Let me put my own results next to that number, because I promised you before and after, not just a study. That mailbox strip that was more crabgrass than grass? The first spring I used corn gluten meal, the new crabgrass that came up was maybe half of what I'd fought the year before, and the grass around it was noticeably darker green and thicker from the nitrogen, standing up instead of lying flat. By the second spring, I was pulling a handful of stragglers instead of fighting a jungle. The clover under the maple, where I'd used that boron mineral once at the extension rate, had thinned way back, and my grass had crept in to take the space. Two problems that had beaten three different methods, handled for a couple of dollars and a little patience. And think about what that patience is really buying you. Every year you spend $20, $30, $40 on a pre-emergent bag, plus a bag of fertilizer on top, plus your time. You're renting a result that resets to nothing the next spring. With this, you're spending less and building something that gets better on its own. You're not a customer on a treadmill anymore. You're a homeowner who fixed his own lawn and understands why it worked. Now, I want to be square with you about the limits, because an honest investigation includes the fine print. Corn gluten meal will not tell the difference between crabgrass seed and grass seed. It stops any seed from establishing a root, so the one rule you cannot break is this. Do not use corn gluten meal in any spot where you're trying to grow new grass from seed at the same time. If you're overseeding a bare patch, you have to pick one job or the other. Either seed that patch and skip the corn gluten meal there for now, or use the corn gluten meal and let your existing grass thicken in to fill the space. In an established lawn that you're not reseeding, that's not a problem at all. But if part of your plan is throwing down grass seed, keep the two apart by a good 6 to 8 weeks. That single detail will save you a lot of confusion. So let me lay the whole solved case out for you plainly, so you can walk outside this weekend and act on it. If your enemy is crabgrass, the answer isn't killing what you see in June. It's stopping the seed in early spring with corn gluten meal at about 20 pounds per 1,000 square feet, watered in and dried out, timed to when the forsythia blooms, and it feeds your grass 10% nitrogen while it works, getting stronger every year you do it. If your enemy is clover, it's a one-time boron treatment at the extension rate on the patch, used carefully and never repeated. And if your enemy is a thin, old, neglected lawn full of open doors, it's both of these working together to close the gaps while your good grass fills back in. 3 failures behind me, 3 real answers in front of you, and not one of them costs what that store shelf wanted you to pay. That's the case, closed. For years, I thought a good lawn was something you bought, one expensive bag at a time, forever. It turns out a good lawn is something you understand, and the understanding costs almost nothing. The material that beat my crabgrass was 100-year-old animal feed. The thing that cleared my clover was in the laundry room, and the only reason it felt like a secret is that nobody makes a fortune telling you the cheap truth. If you're the kind of person who'd rather know why something works than just keep handing money to whoever's selling the shiniest bag, then you already think like I do, and you're going to be just fine out there. So here's what I want you to do right now, before you forget. Tell me in the comments which of the 3 failed methods you've wasted a summer on. Was it the vinegar, the boiling water, or the salt? I've done all 3, so no judgment here. And tell me whether you're going to test the corn gluten meal on one patch first, or go all in on the whole yard this spring. and drop where you're watching from while you're at it, because I love seeing how far this reaches. If you want to stand with the folks who investigate before they spend, who read the research instead of the marketing, this is your crowd, so stick around. Because I've got my next case already half open, and it's a strange one. There's a common drink, something you might have poured yourself this morning, that a groundskeeper swore turned his yellow, struggling grass a deep green in about a week for less than $1. I've been testing it on my own back lawn, and what I'm seeing has me asking a whole new round of questions. I'll show you exactly what I found. Follow along, and let's crack that one together. Now, this video showed you what stopped that crabgrass cold, but inside the Honest Lawn Circle, I pick up right where we just left off. In there, you can ask me your own lawn question, and a real person, me, answers you myself. And you won't be doing this alone. Just point your phone's camera at the code on the screen. And you can cancel any time with one click. Now that your lawn is free of crabgrass and clover, let me show you how one simple cup wipes out every anthill for good, without ever harming your grass. That video is starting right here.